The muscle up is that gateway calisthenics skill, the movement that gets so many people interested in the idea of starting calisthenics and throwing up that middle finger to gravity. And so today, based on all the muscle up progressions there are, we're going to be ranking them based on how good they are at getting us to our first muscle up, but with one condition. There can only be one S-tier muscle up progression. And with that being said, let's kick off with the first one, which is the band assisted muscle up. Muscle ups with a resistance band offer a huge amount of value when it comes to understanding what a muscle up actually feels like. And actually, this is often where people start when it comes to looking to learn how to muscle up. And because of the mechanics of a resistance band, it naturally encourages good form. Because if we kip our legs during a resistance band muscle up, by bending our legs, we're actually taking tension away from the band, which is to reduce the amount that it helps us in the movement. That being said, banded muscle ups paper over the cracks of what is needed to do the proper muscle up. And actually, if you find yourself using an inordinate number of bands just to get over the bar, then you'll be better off served by developing a stronger pull-up from a greater degree of shoulder flexion. And so that's why, perhaps controversially, we're only ranking the banded muscle up today as A tier. Remember, there can only be one S tier muscle up progression. Let's talk pull-ups, and working our pull-ups is always going to supercharge our muscle up training. We need solid strength capacity in order to build up to these higher level skills. There is literally no point in trying to learn to muscle up if you can only just about do 3 pull-ups. And so making movements to bolster our pull-ups will 100% improve our chances. However, there's diminishing marginal returns to doing this. And once we can perform 10 to 12 pull-ups, going for more reps won't necessarily put us in a better position to learn how to muscle up. In fact, I know plenty of people who can do 15, even 20 pull-ups in one set that seriously struggle with the muscle up as a movement. And while the ability to hit those sort of pull-up numbers seriously helps, there is no pull-up volume that automatically equals one muscle up. More to the point, how we do our pull-ups is very important. We've spoken on this channel before about how the hollow body pull-up is superior for muscle up progressions, despite it being more mechanically challenging than the traditional arched back pull-up. And we'll get onto why this is a little bit more later. But because pull-up numbers alone in the context of what we're talking about today are not the end of the story, they are only A tier. Ring muscle ups. Ring muscle ups offer a very different challenge to the bar muscle up, not only because of the instability that gymnastics rings present us with, but also the need to master the false grip to achieve ring muscle ups. On the flip side though, where we have to pull around the bar in the bar muscle up, we don't really have this issue with rings. And so rings places more of an emphasis on that transition element of the muscle up than the bar muscle up does in terms of pulling up high. While these movements may look similar, they should 100% be treated as 2 separate skills. The ring muscle up is not even necessarily a progression to the bar muscle up, and so for this reason, we're going to give it D tier. Leg raise. Now this might seem like a very weird inclusion, but I found that in my efforts to build a strong and stable core that could sustain the full body tension needed in muscle up training, the leg raise was great for helping me understand all my core work in relation to hanging from a bar. Further to this, I could argue that the power that can be generated by maintaining tension as we drive the feet upwards means that the lats don't need to work as hard to generate that pulling power, especially if you want to prevent excessive swinging in our muscle ups. But just generally, I like this exercise, but C tier. False grip training. A false grip is where we place most of our wrists over the bar in order to shorten the lever, and actually can create a more advantageous position in order to transition the muscle up. While the false grip is necessary for the ring muscle up, as well as slower versions of the bar muscle up, it is not really necessary in order to get your first bar muscle up. I'd actually argue that without good conditioning and the proper guidance in terms of using the false grip, this can actually also be downright dangerous. So for that reason, false grip specific work gets the D tier. I want to talk about bodyweight rows for a second, and horizontal pulling might seem like another strange inclusion here, but this movement is a must to support good back development and the key to just building global pulling strength just generally. Bodyweight rows are always going to be something that we need to think about whenever we discuss pulling movements, and if used well, we can even adapt them so that they become more specific to working on the muscle up. But that being said, while they are great for building up overall pulling strength, which will be needed in the muscle up, they don't really directly correlate towards getting that first muscle up, so I'm going to stick them in the B tier. Crowd, we can't really make a muscle up video without talking about explosive pulling, so we're going to talk about the explosive pull up. This is a prerequisite to anything else in terms of getting over the bar, and learning how to generate that pulling force and speed is going to be a cornerstone towards getting our first muscle up. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that if we can pull explosively and high, it renders every other muscle up progression redundant. Now, when we first do these, we won't feel like we're pulling explosively at all. But not only is our intent extremely important when we train, but we can use bands to augment the height that we can get over the bar, Cali Crowd, we have our S tier exercise. Now you might be asking, why is explosive pull-ups any different to the pull-ups that we mentioned that I only ranked as A tier towards the beginning of the video? Well, in the same way that we would consider jogging and sprinting as two different exercises. If you wanted to train for a 100-meter sprint, only one of these two would make sense to do. Intent is so important when we're working on skills, and to focus on pulling explosively very much is to work on the muscle up. In a similar vein, I want to talk about weighted pull-ups. If we can lift 20 kilograms, the logic follows that we should be able to lift 2 kilograms far more rapidly. But while increasing the ceiling of our pull-up 1 rep max is a quality goal within the confines of getting to our first muscle up, this is very much a vanity project, especially when considering that a weighted pull-up is deemed to be a quote-unquote good rep if our chin crosses the bar. Pulling heavy but also pulling high and explosively should be the primary focus here, and if you can do that with additional weight, then great, but because of these ifs and buts, it just misses out on the S tier. Crowd, if you want to improve your muscle ups, this video is powered by the Cali Crowd muscle up program, where you can get a proven step-by-step guide on mastering the muscle up. Link will be down in the description below. Muscle up transitions are another one that we've spoken about before on the channel, and an exercise that we can use to focus this is an exercise that we lovingly on this channel called the hustle up. If you feel you can pull up high enough but struggle with the mechanics of switching from pulling up to pushing down, then working specifically on the transition will make sense. The hustle up is a nice accessory exercise that makes the C tier. Now, interestingly enough, I've seen a lot of people use lat pull-downs where they pull to the waist in a bid to learn how to muscle up. This, in my opinion, is just not a good use of energy, so I won't even waste my time in the video discussing it. Straight to D tier. Kipping is often going to be the first way we achieve our muscle up, doing absolutely anything we can by any means necessary to just get over the bar. And while that can be great for motivation, performing muscle ups where we are aggressively kipping will not get us to a point of performing cleaner muscle ups. In fact, really dirty kipping chicken wing muscle ups can actually be a deterrent to us actually doing the more advantageous exercises that we've already mentioned in this video. So in my opinion, focus on the exercises that are higher up on this tier list. Kipping dirty muscle ups, D tier. Straight bar dips are an exercise that makes up half of the muscle up movement. The easier half, but all the same, half of it. And working on the specifics that make this different to the standard parallel bar dips will do a lot when it comes to making our bar muscle up that bit more efficient. But you can get away with just making sure your standard dips are very strong, so for that reason I'm going to rank these as C tier. Muscle up negatives. Aside from bands, what's the first thing we do when we can't do a movement? It's negatives. By solely focusing on the lengthening part of a movement, we take advantage of us being up to 30% stronger in the eccentric portion, and with muscle ups, it's no different. The challenge, and something I've seen to be a regular problem with muscle up negatives, is when people spam it, particularly when they spam it and they are nowhere near within the 30% tolerance of being strong enough to do a muscle up. This makes muscle up negatives a problem because our connective tissue simply cannot deal with the shearing forces that we're placing on our wrists, shoulders and elbows. Negatives should be used as part of a comprehensive and well-rounded program where recovery and capacity are constantly monitored. But because of their usefulness, muscle up negatives are A tier, but only when used correctly. Scapular circles and general progressions of scapular pull-up are the exercise equivalent of building a house on a rock instead of sand. If you have a stable base, the strength that you can display from that base becomes heightened. For many, direct scapular work is just a grossly underestimated area of bodyweight fitness, but scapular circles and all of its progressions stop us from building our muscle-up house on wonky foundations. Our body's first and foremost priority is to protect us, and simply won't allow us to produce the force necessary to get our first muscle up if our central nervous system understands that there is instability in the shoulder joint. For this reason, underrated as it is, I'll place it at A tier. Russian dips. Like I mentioned before, there are very few exercises out there that allow us to work just the transition element of the muscle up, but Russian dips do exactly this. By taking our dips and adding this lowering of our forearms in the bottom portion of each rep, we need to firstly learn how to pivot around the wrists, as well as learn how to dip out of a very low position. Both of these elements have very real and practical applications towards the muscle up itself, but unless you have trouble with just the transition element of the muscle up, standard dips will always be better at building up pushing strength in general, so for that reason, these are only going to be B tier. But crowd, that is our comprehensive muscle up progression list. I really want to know what you think. Are there any progressions that you feel I've missed out? Are there any that you feel I've miscategorized? Let me know down in the comment section below. And crowd, if you want to see how I learned how to muscle up back in the day, then check out this video right here.